A massive economic storm is hitting the U.S. aluminum industry as the country's export value plummeted by a staggering 94% overnight. What are the consequences? It's not just a shocking number, but the far-reaching effects on the global economy. This decline is pushing small businesses to the brink of collapse, while consumers are facing skyrocketing prices, directly impacting everything from keeping cars on the road to cans of soda on the shelves. This is the largest trade crisis in decades, and it's not just aluminum manufacturers, but the entire U.S. economy that is facing severe consequences. At the same time, America's competitor, Canada, is accelerating investment and taking over market share while the U.S. struggles. Stay tuned to the video to get a deeper understanding of the causes and impacts of this crisis. Comment 1 if you agree that the U.S. needs stronger measures to protect its aluminum industry, or 0 if you disagree. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest hot news. Let's discuss the impact of this collapse and share your thoughts in the comments. The recent decline in U.S. aluminum exports is not just an issue for domestic industries, but has also caused widespread effects on the global economy. With a 94% drop in aluminum exports overnight, this event has triggered one of the most severe trade crises in decades. This has not only impacted prices and businesses, but also raised significant questions about trade policies and the impact of political decisions on national economies. One of the main causes behind the rapid collapse in aluminum exports is the dramatic shift in U.S. trade strategy, particularly when the Trump administration imposed a 50% aluminum tariff. Although the initial goal was to protect domestic industries, the negative impact of these decisions went far beyond initial predictions. The international community, especially major trade partners like Canada and European countries, quickly responded by increasing investments in their domestic production facilities and seeking to reduce reliance on U.S. aluminum. While U.S. businesses face uncontrollable price hikes, foreign aluminum exporters have quickly seized market share, particularly since these countries were not subject to heavy tariffs. As a result, 94% of U.S. aluminum exports vanished overnight, leaving aluminum manufacturers and related industries in unprecedented difficulty. This not only created a crisis in the aluminum sector, but also had a ripple effect on industries dependent on aluminum, such as automotive manufacturing, appliances, and construction. The decline in U.S. aluminum exports has not only created hardships for the industry, but also had a significant impact on the national economy. As aluminum prices surged more than 20%, consumers were forced to pay billions of dollars more for essential products. Consumer industries, including automotive, appliances, and many other goods, faced escalating prices, reducing purchasing power and weakening consumer demand. This serves as a major lesson in the risks of reliance on foreign supply sources and the potential pitfalls of tariff policies implemented without a solid backup strategy. For small businesses, the situation is even more severe. Many companies relying on cheap aluminum from international suppliers have faced shortages and high prices, raising production costs and rendering them unable to compete. This has led to some small businesses closing or downsizing, exacerbating unemployment and weakening economic growth in many areas. This crisis is not just a warning for the U.S. aluminum industry, but also highlights the importance of building sustainable and flexible trade policies. An important lesson here is that over-reliance on a single market or source of supply can pose significant risks when there are policy shifts. Therefore, businesses need to diversify supply sources and develop contingency strategies to minimize the negative impact of changes in the global trade environment. Moreover, this aluminum export crisis also points to the fact that political decisions, while providing short-term benefits, can have long-lasting consequences if not carefully considered. Governments need to take into account the comprehensive effects of tariff and trade policies on both domestic businesses and international partners. The lack of flexibility in these policies could cause the U.S. to lose its competitive position in key industries. Finally, consumers and businesses alike must learn to cope with the volatility of the global market. Preparing for emergencies and finding ways to protect the interests of the public in a rapidly changing economic environment is crucial. From this lesson, we can clearly see the necessity for a trade policy that not only protects domestic interests, but also considers collaboration and sustainable development with international partners. One of the most prominent decisions in President Donald Trump's trade policy was the imposition of a 50% tariff on aluminum imports from other countries. The primary goal of this move was to protect the domestic aluminum industry from competition by foreign producers, particularly countries with lower production costs, such as China and other Asian nations. The U.S. government argued that this tariff would help shield domestic aluminum manufacturers, creating a fairer competitive environment for U.S. companies. The basic idea behind this tariff was to make imported aluminum more expensive, encouraging consumers and domestic producers to switch to using domestically produced aluminum. This would not only protect jobs in the aluminum industry, but also support stronger growth for U.S. manufacturing businesses. While controversial, this tariff was seen as a necessary measure to prevent other countries from dominating the aluminum sector and to ensure the U.S. could maintain its competitive edge in international markets. However, this move sparked reactions not only within the U.S., but also heightened tensions with major trade partners, including Canada, the U.S.'s second-largest aluminum export partner. While the Trump administration believed that this tariff would benefit the U.S., many economic experts pointed out that it could have long-term consequences for other industries, increasing costs for businesses and consumers. One of the notable effects of the 50% aluminum tariff was the growing concern that the U.S. might unintentionally hand over the future of its aluminum industry to Canada. Canada, a neighbor and major trading partner, quickly sought to ramp up production and expand export opportunities outside the U.S. Although Canada wasn't hit with the heavy tariffs that other countries faced, the volatility in the aluminum industry caused by U.S. decisions presented a great opportunity for Canadian manufacturers. With the 50% tariff imposed on aluminum from other countries, many manufacturers turned to markets like Canada to access international customers they could no longer reach through the U.S. This shift could weaken the competitiveness of the U.S. aluminum industry while accelerating the expansion of Canada's aluminum sector. Canada didn't just react by boosting domestic production, but also signed new trade agreements with several countries to mitigate the negative effects of the U.S. tariff decision. Whether Canada can replace the U.S. as the leader in the aluminum industry is an issue drawing attention from many experts and analysts. They argue that if the U.S. does not take appropriate measures to maintain competitiveness in the aluminum sector, it may inadvertently hand over a key market share to its neighbor. Ultimately, the Trump administration's 50% aluminum tariff is not just a trade decision, but a crucial lesson in industrial development strategy. While protective measures for domestic industries are necessary in some cases, imposing tariffs too aggressively without considering the broader impact can lead to unforeseen consequences, including the shifting of industries and changing dynamics with international trade partners. The lesson from this tariff decision is that policies must be implemented flexibly and with a long-term vision. It's essential not only to protect domestic industries, but also to maintain strong trade relationships with key partners. In reality, offering opportunities for other countries to strengthen their position in an industry that the U.S. once led could result in the loss of the U.S.'s pivotal role in global supply chains. Since the implementation of the 50% aluminum tariff, aluminum prices in the U.S. have surged by 22%, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. This unprecedented rise in aluminum prices has sent shockwaves through the U.S. economy, especially in a context where industries and consumers are already struggling with inflation and supply chain issues. This sudden price hike has not only affected aluminum producers, but also rippled across various other industries, from automobile manufacturing to everyday consumer goods. The 22% increase in aluminum prices has forced many companies in aluminum-dependent industries to adjust their production plans, raise product prices, or even scale down operations to cope with higher costs. This is particularly severe for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, which have already faced many challenges, such as rising raw material costs and disruptions in global supply chains. The rising price of aluminum has placed them in an even more difficult position as they try to manage higher production costs while keeping their product prices competitive. The surge in aluminum prices has had widespread effects on the U.S. economy. First, the production costs of other industries have soared, reducing profitability and competitiveness for companies. Industries such as automotive, electronics, construction, and appliances, sectors heavily dependent on aluminum have been forced to face higher production costs. This not only weakens consumer purchasing power, but also forces businesses to find ways to cut costs, sometimes by downsizing production or even shutting down certain manufacturing lines. The automotive industry, for example, has struggled with rising aluminum prices since aluminum is a key material in producing car body parts, wheels, and engine components. The price increase has led to higher car prices, causing consumers to pay more for automobiles. Domestic car manufacturers, already facing fierce competition from international automakers, have had to adjust their pricing strategies to maintain market share. Additionally, the construction industry, which relies on aluminum for applications like windows, roofing, and other building materials, has also been significantly affected. The sudden rise in aluminum prices has caused construction companies to face higher building costs, which in turn has increased real estate prices and reduced housing accessibility for the public. The inflationary environment in the U.S. economy was already a significant issue before the aluminum price spike. The increase in aluminum prices has exacerbated this situation, particularly for industries dependent on aluminum to produce goods. Manufacturers are not only facing rising raw material costs, but also grappling with supply chain issues. The disruption in aluminum production due to tariffs and global supply chain interruptions has placed additional pressure on businesses. This issue has been compounded by unstable material supply and geopolitical factors, such as strained trade relations with partners like China and Canada, which continue to cause instability. Companies are not only dealing with higher costs, but also material shortages, which disrupt production and cause delays in delivery times. The lesson from the aluminum price increase is that over-reliance on a single supply source or protectionist industry policies can have unforeseen consequences. A strict tariff policy may offer short-term benefits to some industries, but can negatively affect other industries and weaken the competitiveness of the economy. Additionally, the aluminum price surge highlights the need to develop long-term strategies to protect domestic industries without increasing costs for consumers and businesses. Strengthening supply diversification and developing contingency strategies for industries dependent on external raw materials is crucial. The lessons from this crisis show that trade and tariff policies must be carefully considered to avoid long-term negative effects on the economy and related industries. Small businesses in the U.S., particularly those in industries that rely on aluminum as a core material, are facing increasing economic pressure after the sharp rise in aluminum prices. Aluminum is a crucial material in many manufacturing sectors, including automotive, packaging, construction, and electronics. The 22% increase in aluminum prices has directly impacted the production costs of these companies, making it difficult for them to maintain operations and remain competitive in the market. Small businesses, which have limited resources compared to larger companies, are unable to easily absorb these increased costs. The rise in aluminum prices means these companies must pay more for raw materials, while consumer purchasing power is not increasing proportionally. This has squeezed their profits, and some companies are even facing losses. Small businesses in the automotive industry, for instance, are now paying more for aluminum parts such as car frames and engine components. This not only raises product prices, but also makes it harder for these companies to compete with larger firms, who can mitigate the impact of the price hike by negotiating long-term supply contracts or seeking alternative material sources. Aluminum plays an essential role in many industries, and the price increase has caused a major shock to small businesses, especially those in industries that rely on aluminum to produce goods like packaging, automotive components, and electronics. For example, in the packaging industry, aluminum is widely used for making beverage cans, processed foods, and pharmaceutical packaging. The increase in aluminum prices has pushed up the cost of packaging products, raising expenses for food and beverage manufacturers, which in turn drives up the price of these goods for consumers. In the automotive industry, aluminum is a key material for producing lightweight parts that help reduce vehicle weight and improve fuel efficiency. Smaller car manufacturers, particularly those unable to purchase raw materials at discounted rates, are struggling to maintain competitiveness as production costs increase. They face higher product prices but cannot adjust retail prices too much, as this would reduce consumer demand and push them out of the market. For small businesses, The rise in aluminum prices can lead to a chain of negative impacts. As input costs rise, companies must reduce output to cut costs, which means lower revenue. They also face increasing competition from larger companies that can cut costs by importing cheaper materials or securing favorable long-term supply contracts with major suppliers. Small businesses are also struggling to maintain cash flow as production costs increase while product prices cannot rise correspondingly. As a result, they may have to cut costs in other areas, which can affect product quality and customer service. These businesses may face downsizing, layoffs, or even closures if they are unable to stay competitive in an environment of rising costs. An important lesson from this situation is that protecting domestic industries through tariffs may have short-term benefits, but can create long-term negative effects, especially for small businesses. This policy can create an imbalance between large and small companies, where larger firms can absorb increased costs or negotiate favorable trade agreements, while small businesses are left unable to compete. Moreover, over-reliance on a single material, especially when its price can fluctuate dramatically, can pose unforeseen risks to small businesses. Therefore, companies should look for ways to diversify their material supply sources and build risk management strategies to minimize the impact of raw material price fluctuations. This serves as a reminder of the need to develop flexible and sustainable trade policies, while ensuring that small businesses can compete fairly in a global economy full of volatility. Please leave a 1 if you agree with the viewpoint that current tariff policies are placing significant pressure on small businesses, or a 0 if you disagree. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Share your thoughts in the comments and let's discuss the impact of trade policies on small businesses. When aluminum prices surged due to tariffs, businesses faced a tough choice. Either absorb the losses, reduce profits, or pass on the increased costs to consumers. For many companies, maintaining stable prices became impossible, especially when aluminum is a core material in products like automobiles, food packaging, and construction materials. As a result, instead of reducing production or compromising product quality, some businesses opted to raise their prices to offset the increased costs. While this choice was necessary for some companies, it wasn't an easy solution. Although shifting the cost to consumers could help maintain profitability, it also increased the financial burden on customers, particularly in the context of rising inflation and higher living costs. Consumer goods like cars, packaged foods, and household items became more expensive, forcing consumers to tighten their spending. This, in turn, affected purchasing power and created a negative economic cycle. As aluminum prices rose, companies in industries that use aluminum as an input faced the tough decision of adjusting product prices. Automotive manufacturers, for example, had to raise car prices to cover the higher material costs. Since aluminum is a key component in parts like car frames, wheels, and engine components, this price hike led to higher vehicle costs. This not only reduced consumer access to new cars, but also increased the total cost of car ownership, impacting other industries like insurance and repair services. In addition to the automotive industry, the food and beverage packaging industry also faced similar difficulties. Aluminum is widely used in producing soda cans, processed foods, and pharmaceutical packaging. The rise in aluminum prices forced packaging companies to increase their prices, thus raising costs for food and beverage manufacturers and pushing up prices for consumers. As the cost of essential products like soda, packaged foods, and other everyday items increases, consumers are forced to spend more, creating financial strain on households, especially amid rising inflation and increased prices. Shifting the increased costs onto consumers not only affects individual purchasing power, but also places pressure on the broader economy. As the prices of basic products like food, cars, and everyday goods increase, consumers are forced to cut back on spending for other items or adjust their consumption habits. This reduces consumer demand, affecting company revenues and potentially creating a prolonged period of reduced demand. Furthermore, price increases can lead to dissatisfaction and negative reactions from consumers. While larger companies may be able to adjust prices without losing customers, smaller businesses struggle more when prices rise. Consumers tend to seek out alternatives or switch to other brands if prices become too high. weakening the competitive advantage of businesses trying to offset rising costs. The lesson from this situation is that businesses need to carefully consider their decision to pass on cost increases to consumers. While this may be a short-term solution to maintain profits, if done excessively, it can reduce consumer purchasing power and create dissatisfaction. To ensure long-term sustainability, businesses should look for ways to reduce production costs, optimize processes, and seek alternative solutions for expensive raw materials. Additionally, companies need to establish reasonable and flexible pricing strategies to protect profits while still keeping customers satisfied. It's also important to consider macroeconomic factors such as inflation, changing consumer incomes, and consumption trends to adjust strategies accordingly. Finally, this serves as a reminder that trade policies and tariffs don't just impact businesses but also consumers. Trade decisions need to be comprehensively evaluated, considering their effects on both industries and consumers to ensure sustainable economic growth. The construction industry is one of the sectors most severely affected by the rise in aluminum prices. Aluminum is a crucial material in construction projects, especially for producing components like windows, doors, wall frames, and other architectural details. With aluminum prices soaring by 22%, construction contractors, especially small and medium-sized businesses, have faced significant challenges in maintaining reasonable production costs. For smaller contractors, the additional costs of aluminum have placed immense pressure on cash flow and profit margins. These businesses, unlike larger companies, cannot easily negotiate prices with aluminum suppliers or purchase in bulk at discounted rates. As a result, they bear much higher costs. This not only impacts their competitiveness, but also increases the overall cost of construction and renovation projects. With the surge in prices for aluminum and other building materials, small contractors not only face higher costs, but also uncertainty about budgets, making it difficult to plan long-term projects. The volatility in aluminum prices has not only created difficulties for contractors in controlling costs, but has also caused instability in pricing construction and renovation projects. Contractors struggle to accurately predict material and supply costs, which makes it challenging to provide precise quotes to customers. This issue not only undermines customer trust, but can also lead to price disputes once the project is completed. As aluminum prices have risen sharply, many contractors have been forced to adjust their bids or find ways to cut costs elsewhere in the project to compensate for the higher material costs. However, these adjustments can lead to a decrease in the quality of the construction, which further concerns customers. Additionally, the uncertainty around pricing has led many clients to delay construction or renovation projects, making it harder for small construction companies to maintain steady workloads and cash flow. The impact of rising aluminum prices does not stop with contractors. It also affects consumers. As the cost of construction and renovation projects increases, consumers must pay more for these services, which creates financial strain, especially for families or individuals with limited budgets. Home renovation projects, the construction of new buildings, and the replacement of old building materials have become more expensive, forcing some consumers to postpone or scale down their projects. Additionally, the price hike has led some consumers to seek alternatives, such as using cheaper materials or cutting back on non-essential aspects of the construction project. This may result in reduced quality of the final product or failure to complete the project as originally planned. For those planning to build or renovate their homes, the price increase can lead to delays or cancellations of projects, which in turn impacts the overall construction industry. The key lesson from this situation is the need for flexible strategies and clear financial planning in the construction industry. Contractors, especially small businesses, must be well prepared and have contingencies in place for fluctuations in material costs, minimizing the negative impacts on profit margins and competitiveness. Additionally, building sustainable partnerships with suppliers and finding reasonable alternative solutions can help mitigate the risks posed by material price volatility. For consumers, the lesson is the importance of financial preparation for construction or renovation projects in the face of fluctuating prices. Careful planning and accurate cost estimation can help consumers make informed decisions and avoid the shock of unexpected price hikes in building materials. Finally, policymakers need to carefully consider the impact of tariff decisions and trade policies on both the construction industry and consumers. While protecting domestic industries is necessary, these measures must be implemented in a way that does not negatively affect other industries or domestic consumers. One of the most significant consequences of tariffs is the severe impact on small businesses, particularly those with narrow profit margins. Family-owned stores and breweries, which rely on imported materials, especially aluminum, to produce their products, are facing major difficulties as production costs soar due to tariffs. These businesses, unlike large corporations, cannot absorb the increased costs and are therefore struggling to maintain operations and stay competitive in the market. For instance, family-owned businesses in the food and beverage sector, which require aluminum for packaging products such as soft drinks, processed foods, or other consumer goods, are now bearing higher costs as aluminum prices increase. The rise in production costs could force them to increase the prices of their products, which not only affects consumer purchasing power, but also reduces their ability to compete with larger rivals who can easily negotiate lower prices with suppliers. Similarly, breweries, where aluminum is widely used for producing beer cans, also face rising costs. When aluminum prices increase, these breweries cannot keep their prices stable without sacrificing profit margins. They may need to reduce production or even raise product prices, leading consumers to switch to other brands or seek alternative options. For small businesses, especially those with slim profit margins, the increase in input costs like aluminum can create insurmountable challenges. Small businesses lack the capital to absorb higher costs or secure long-term contracts with suppliers for discounted prices. They face fierce competition from large companies, which have the resources to cope with price volatility and tariffs. This is particularly serious for businesses in consumer industries, food and beverage production, and other small manufacturing sectors, where sudden increases in raw material costs reduce their ability to maintain competitive prices. These businesses cannot raise prices too much without losing customers, and they cannot bear the increased costs without impacting their profits. As a result, many small businesses are forced to scale down, lay off employees, or, in the worst-case scenario, close their doors. The key lesson from the impact of tariffs on small businesses is the need to protect small businesses within the economy. These businesses play a vital role in maintaining economic diversity, creating jobs, and driving innovation. However, without proper support measures, they will struggle to remain operational when raw material costs and tariffs suddenly increase. The government needs to carefully consider tariff and trade policies to ensure that small businesses are not left behind. Creating financial support programs, tax reductions, or providing support loans could help small businesses overcome challenges when facing price volatility. Additionally, small businesses must look for ways to optimize costs and enhance competitiveness, such as exploring alternative suppliers, negotiating long-term contracts, or improving production processes. Finally, small businesses need to have solid financial plans in place and be ready to adapt to changes in the trade environment to ensure their survival and growth in a constantly changing economy. When the U.S. government imposed a 50% tariff on aluminum imports from other countries, Canada, a major trade partner of the U.S. in the aluminum sector, responded strongly. Not only did Canada endure the blow, but it also implemented aggressive countermeasures to protect its interests, demonstrating its resolve to defend its domestic aluminum industry. As a key supplier of aluminum to North America, Canada quickly retaliated with tariffs on American products. These measures were designed to safeguard Canada's aluminum industry while exerting pressure on the U.S. to reconsider its trade policies. Specifically, Canada imposed tariffs on various U.S. goods, including aluminum and steel products, to counter the unfairness in international trade that they were facing. In addition to these tariff measures, Canada sought to strengthen trade relations with other countries to reduce its dependency on the U.S. market. Canada ramped up aluminum exports to other markets, such as the European Union and Asia, while signing trade agreements to protect its domestic aluminum industry. Canada plays a crucial role in the North American aluminum industry, supplying over 70% of aluminum to the U.S. With such a large share, Canada is not just a strategic supplier but an essential part of the global aluminum supply chain. Therefore, the imposition of tariffs on aluminum imports from Canada did not only affect Canadian aluminum producers, but also caused significant disruption for U.S. industries reliant on a stable aluminum supply from Canada. With such a heavy reliance on aluminum imports from Canada, U.S. businesses in industries such as automotive, appliance manufacturing, and construction faced shortages of materials and rising costs. This made Canada a vital trade partner that the U.S. could not easily disregard. As a result, Canada's response was not only a reaction to an unfavorable tariff policy, but also a way to ensure that its interests would be protected, while maintaining stability in the trade relationship between the two nations. Besides imposing tariffs, Canada also actively engaged in trade negotiations with the U.S. and other countries to seek long-term cooperative solutions. While tensions existed between the two countries during this period, Canada emphasized the importance of maintaining a fair and stable trade environment for businesses on both sides. The lesson from Canada's response is the importance of protecting strategic industries in the face of changing trade policies. Canada skillfully used tariffs not only to protect its aluminum industry, but also to preserve its economic interests in trade relations with the U.S., while solidifying its position in international markets. Smaller countries or those with key industries that are vulnerable to tariff policies need to prepare strong counter-strategies, ranging from seeking new markets to enhancing negotiating power in international trade agreements. These measures help countries protect their economic interests while asserting their role and strength in global trade relations. Amid trade tensions with the U.S. and the need to develop its aluminum industry, Canada has taken decisive steps to strengthen and elevate its position on the international stage. One key initiative is the $1.1 billion modernization project announced by Aluminary Alouette, a prominent player in the aluminum industry. This project, located in Quebec, will use clean hydroelectric power from Hydro-Quebec, marking a significant milestone in the sustainable development of Canada's aluminum industry. This modernization project not only focuses on increasing aluminum production capacity, but also ensures that the production process is environmentally friendly. By using clean hydroelectric power, the project reduces carbon emissions, minimizing the negative impact on the environment while ensuring the long-term sustainability of Canada's aluminum sector. This is a bold move in Canada's long-term strategy to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and promote a greener economy. The project will not only meet domestic aluminum demand, but also expand Canada's export capabilities as international trade relations evolve. The application of modern technologies and renewable energy sources helps Canada not only maintain its competitiveness in the aluminum industry, but also enhance its international reputation in fulfilling commitments related to environmental protection and sustainable development. Through this initiative, Canada is not only safeguarding its interests in the aluminum sector, but also laying the groundwork for green development initiatives, positioning the country as a model in integrating industrial production with environmental protection. Businesses, particularly in the aluminum sector, will be further motivated to adopt clean technologies and minimize environmental impact, creating significant opportunities for long-term growth in both the industry and the economy. The key lesson from this project is that sustainable development is not just a trend, but a critical factor in maintaining competitiveness in the global economy. Canada has skillfully aligned the need to develop its aluminum industry with environmental protection goals, thus opening a new pathway for both large and small businesses to transition to greener production models. This also highlights the importance of investing in clean technologies and renewable energy for sustainable development. Countries and businesses can learn from Canada's example in integrating renewable energy into large industries, not only to protect the environment, but also to enhance brand value and competitive strength in international markets. The U.S. tariff policy on aluminum imports has had far-reaching consequences not only for American businesses, but also for aluminum exporting countries. In this context, Canada quickly seized the opportunity to assert its position in the global aluminum market. With strong investment policies in the aluminum sector, particularly in Quebec, Canada has not only maintained its role as a major aluminum supplier to North America, but has also enhanced its competitiveness in international markets. Quebec, home to many aluminum production facilities, has invested heavily in energy-efficient technologies and the development of green aluminum, aiming to minimize environmental impact. These initiatives not only make Canada's aluminum industry more sustainable, but also open up new opportunities for aluminum exports to international markets, where environmental protection requirements are becoming increasingly stringent. Thanks to its commitment to sustainable development and the adoption of clean technologies, Canada has enhanced the value of its aluminum industry, strengthening its competitiveness against major rivals, particularly the U.S., in the global aluminum market. While the U.S. faces instability due to tariffs and measures to protect its domestic industry, Canada, especially the province of Quebec, has pioneered the development of sustainable aluminum. Aluminum plants in Quebec use renewable energy from Hydro-Quebec's clean hydroelectric power and have invested in energy-efficient production facilities that reduce carbon emissions and environmental impact. With this commitment, Canada's aluminum industry not only maintains its competitiveness, but also meets increasingly strict environmental standards that other countries are emphasizing. The production of green aluminum in Quebec has not only enhanced Canada's international reputation in environmental protection, but has also created higher value-added products that meet the growing demand from global markets for sustainable industrial products. This long-term strategy helps Canada not only overcome the challenges posed by the U.S. tariff policies, but also rise to become a model in the global aluminum industry. With strategic steps in investing in green technologies and energy-saving measures, aluminum plants in Canada are becoming stronger, cleaner, and more competitive than their U.S. counterparts. By using clean hydroelectric power, production costs in Canada's aluminum plants are lower, and energy efficiency is higher, which helps reduce product prices while maintaining quality and sustainability. This makes Canadian aluminum the preferred choice for many countries and international companies, especially as the global trend shifts towards green industrial development and environmental protection. Moreover, with the reduced competition from U.S. aluminum due to high tariffs, Canadian aluminum plants are increasingly dominating international markets. Canadian aluminum products not only meet quality standards, but also adhere to environmental standards, which builds trust and preference among international customers. The lesson from Canada's strategy is that investing in sustainable development and clean technology not only helps domestic industries overcome immediate challenges, but also creates significant long-term opportunities for growth. Countries and businesses can learn from this strategy, understanding that combining industrial production with environmental protection is not just a choice, but a crucial factor in maintaining competitiveness in the global economy. For the U.S., the lesson is that tariff policies and measures to protect domestic industries must be carefully considered, as they can inadvertently create unforeseen opportunities for competitors, especially when countries like Canada pivot strongly toward clean and sustainable production. Since the U.S. imposed tariffs on aluminum, Canada quickly realized that relying too heavily on the U.S. market posed significant risks. To mitigate the negative impact of these changes, Canada shifted its trade strategy, seeking new markets and strengthening its position not only in North America but globally. Diversifying its customer base has not only helped Canada maintain stability in the aluminum sector, but also opened up greater opportunities for growth, reducing its dependence on a single market. Canada has actively strengthened trade relationships with international partners, particularly the European Union, Asian countries, and emerging markets. Through free trade agreements, Canadian aluminum companies can more easily export products to these regions without facing the strict tariff barriers that apply to the U.S. These efforts have not only helped Canada maintain export volumes, but have also increased the trade value of its aluminum industry, reinforcing the country's position on the international stage. One of the key strategies Canada has pursued is not allowing itself to become dependent on a single trade partner. Canada recognized that reliance on the U.S. market, even though it was the largest partner in the aluminum industry, could easily be challenged or altered by unilateral trade policies such as tariffs. As a result, Canada began looking for new markets and expanding its export reach. The Canadian government has worked diligently to establish multilateral trade agreements while encouraging domestic aluminum companies to expand their export activities to countries and regions with high demand for aluminum, such as Europe and Asia. In addition to developing traditional markets, Canada has also sought to increase exports to emerging markets, where demand for construction materials and aluminum is growing. These efforts have not only enabled Canada to grow robustly, but also created long-term economic stability, reducing its dependence on a single country. While the U.S. continues to face instability in its trade strategy and domestic market, Canada has built a more diversified and sustainable foundation, ensuring the long-term growth of its aluminum industry. The important lesson from this strategy is the necessity of maintaining a flexible trade approach and not being overly reliant on a single market. In the context of globalization and changes in international trade policies, countries and businesses must be agile in seeking new opportunities for growth and maintaining economic stability. Canada has demonstrated a smart strategy by aggressively seeking new markets, not only protecting its aluminum industry, but also strengthening its position internationally. This is also a model for other countries to follow in terms of expanding trade relationships, building a strong customer base, and minimizing risks from external factors. Canada has proven itself to be a strong competitor in the global aluminum industry. Despite the U.S. implementing high tariffs, Canada not only reacted quickly, but also seized the opportunity to reinforce its position. Through significant investments in clean technology and sustainable aluminum, coupled with the use of hydroelectric power from Hydro-Quebec, Canada has not only mitigated the impact of U.S. tariffs, but also flourished in the global aluminum sector. Sustainable development strategies and market expansion have given Canada substantial competitive advantages. While the U.S. grapples with unstable tariff policies, Canada has shown that it can grow independently of a single country. Canada's flexibility and ability to diversify its international trade strategy have allowed it to maintain sustainable development and enhance the value of its national aluminum industry. The trade strategy of Canada provides an important lesson on flexibility and diversification. A country must maintain sustainable trade relationships, not rely on one major partner, to reduce risks and create long-term growth opportunities. By combining industrial development with environmental protection, Canada has not only maintained its competitive edge, but also affirmed its sustainability in the global trade strategy. Thank you for watching today's video. Please leave a like if you agree with Canada's strategy and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit subscribe to follow more exciting upcoming videos. Let's continue exploring interesting topics on trade and economics together.